Welcome to another edition of Transparency in Government. We are here today. It is May 25th, 2017. We're with our town manager, Kevin Smith, and Kevin and I, as usual, are going to go over some of the things that are happening around town, get into a little more depth than you might have heard so far, and hopefully we can help you get educated on what Londonderry is doing. Kevin.
Dottie.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay,
I
thought we agreed you weren't going to yell at me.
I know. See what I said? I might get excited.
He got excited during the sound check. Okay. The biggest issue seems to be Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Let's just dig right into that one first. There's just so many people that are upset about it, and not for for good reason.
Yeah.
I think it's certainly legitimate that people are concerned about the traffic and things like that. But I don't think there's a really good understanding of the process.
Yeah.
Can you tell me first, there was an original ordinance in place when that property was approved for a project. Can you start there and give me a little background?
Yeah, there's a lot there's a lot to this that you can look back on in hindsight, say we should have done things differently.
But before we changed and did things differently, we had something in place that...
Well, we had an ordinance in place. We had a workforce housing ordinance in place, which the state has said you have to have one. So we don't have a choice in that. And the way the previous ordinance was written, it allowed for this kind of a development in the location where they're now going.
Right.
The new ordinance that... since that it's been fixed.
Right, but they had already been approved for that.
But they were already in the pipeline.
Right.
They hadn't been approved, but the plan was in the pipeline.
So they had to be...
So legally, we couldn't say...
Oh, we changed our mind.
We've changed our mind. We've changed it now. You can't go there.
Yeah.
Because you just can't do that. Once they're in the pipe, and by in the pipeline, I mean they had already submitted their application.
They had started the process
for design review.
Yeah, okay.
Right. But we had I think 3 workforce housing applications in a row. We had the townhomes at Whittemore Place, which is the NeighborWorks project off of Mammoth Road. We had the Wallace Farm, housing off of Exit 5, right off of Perkins Road. And then we had this one, and that was at that time the council said, okay, we got to look at this ordinance because why all of a sudden are we getting all of these workforce housing developments coming in, and why is it going where it's going? And I think that's the hang up that most people have with this the location of it.
Absolutely.
Nobody likes the location of it, and I haven't heard
nobody likes it, not even the town council or.
No, right. No, I don't like it.
Yeah.
The location of it. And there's a difference between not liking the location versus not liking workforce housing. I haven't heard anyone say we shouldn't allow workforce housing.
I have not either.
Shouldn't be allowed in the area it's going in the middle of what are residential neighborhoods. But unfortunately, the previous ordinance, and this is again in hindsight, allowed for it to go in that location. Now they did have to seek variances because of the way the last ordinance was written.
Okay.
They went before the ZBA, explained what hardships existed, and I would tell you that they weren't the first ones to do that. Wallace Farm had to get variances as well.
Okay.
Because the way the ordinance was written, it said 75% of it had to be workforce housing. I think we were probably the only municipality that had it as high as 70. Bedford's is a lot lower, for instance.
And is that a problem because of the fact that the developer can't really make the money?
Well, that's what the developer is saying, and they have to prove it. They have to give all the data to the ZBA. Now, someone can make the argument of, well, was there truly a hardship? I can't answer that. That was something, again, the ZBA had to look at.
Well, and the ZBA has a definition of hardship that's demanded of them by the state.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Yep.
Because I know they call themselves
semi-judicial.
Judicial, and have to go by those specific rules.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And that's the other thing too, is that when you look at this whole process, there were rules guiding it along the whole way. You know, there's very little subjectivity to any of it. A lot of it is just objective. And the planning board has, what I would say, not a lot of discretion over a lot of items. You know, many of them are just black and white. Did they check the box? Didn't they check the box?
Yeah.
So, so going back, so that's how they got into that location. Is the under the old ordinance, it was allowed to be there. If you look at, since we've changed the ordinance, we haven't had any workforce housing applications come in since that ordinance has been changed. And
but it still meets with state requirements.
It does. Yeah, it still meets the state requirements. It still meets the spirit of the state law. So you can still build workforce housing. It's just now the areas you can build it in are more limited than the way the last ordinance was written. So that's, you know, so that's how it got in the pipeline to begin with. Moving forward to what recently happened with the planning board. When the planning board initially had voted it or not approved it, the prevailing motion at that time was to approve the complex
process, right?
The project,
right.
And it lost. It lost on a tie initially at 3-3, and then it lost 4-2. The problem with it, though, was that there was no, a prevailing motion has to be approved. So what should have happened is someone should have made a motion to not accept the application, and then a vote should have happened on that. But that's not what happened. The only thing that happened was a vote on a motion to approve it. If you watch the state legislature, works the same way.
Right.
A bill will come out, ought to pass. If the ought to pass motion fails, the bill doesn't then fail. There has to be a new motion, what's called inexpedient to legislate, that's what they call it, and then they vote on that. Until a motion gets a majority of votes, it's still alive, if you will. And that's what happened in this case, is after the votes were taken, there was questions, were things done right procedurally, and what we discovered is they weren't. They had to go back and then take another vote, you know, on another motion to get a prevailing motion.
Let me ask you a question. There's been a lot of discussion over the fact, well, where was the town lawyer in all of this? He was at that meeting. Is it inappropriate for him to say to the chair, excuse me, sidebar, whatever, you know, this is what we need to do?
No, it isn't. And in hindsight, I think he thinks he would have done that. When it was getting close to the time of taking the vote, he was signaling to one of the planning board members that he wanted to take a timeout, if you will, go into non-public and discuss the procedures that had to take place.
Right.
He thought that planning board member had seen him signaling saying, you know, move to go into non-public, but that it didn't happen. The planning board member, you know, and him, there wasn't the communication there. Again,
a note to the chair next time.
Well, in hindsight,
as I said, next time.
Yeah, and at the same time, I mean, he's trying to also respect the rules and procedures of respect the meeting of the planning board.
Understood.
You know, and not have to. He doesn't want to make it look like he's running the planning board
Oh
meeting,
no,
right?
That's what I'm saying. A discreet note to the chair, just saying maybe we should discuss process or something.
Well, and afterwards, in discussions with me, and I think in discussions with the planning board as well, he said, "Hey, look I'm letting you know." This time going into it, or any time in the future, if I see something that is procedurally not happening correctly, I'm getting up and saying something whether you call on me or not.
Okay.
So, you know, I know there...
With other boards as well, if he's present?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and typically he'd only be present for either planning board or town council meetings.
Well, the prevailing attitude has been he's there, we're paying him. We need him to do these things.
But
so
if you watch,
I understand what you're saying.
Previous meetings, though, Dottie, that he's been at, whether it's planning board or town council, typically what happens is the chairperson will call on him or another member of the planning board.
Right.
In fact, it happened at a previous planning board meeting where it may have even happened at that meeting where they took that initial vote, where he was called upon to speak up and answer some questions. And typically that's what will happen at one of these meetings. You know, again, hindsight's 20/20.
Totally.
And it would have been, yes, it would have been much better had either the chairperson said,
Right.
hey, are we doing this right? Or if he had just stood up and said, you folks need to stop. He tried doing it in a polite way by signaling to one of them, hey, we need to discuss this. Again, lines got crossed, it didn't happen. And so consequently...
We can have a sign language class.
Yeah. But, you know, Mike is, you know, I know there's been some consternation among some about Mike's role as the attorney and, well, did he do enough? I got to tell you, you know, if you look at Mike's credentials and talk to other attorneys around the state about Mike's work, Mike is highly regarded as one of the best attorneys in the state of New Hampshire. I mean, Mike came from the Attorney General's office, did a phenomenal job there, and since he's been in private practice, you know, if someone's in trouble, they're calling Mike Ramsdell because they know he's very, very good.
And his area of expertise is town government?
Mike's before getting into municipal government with Londonderry, Mike was mostly in criminal law. That being said, you know, as I said, Mike worked in the Attorney General's office. Mike obviously is familiar with municipal law, and I will tell you that when Mike's unsure about something, Mike will go to other attorneys to double check, hey, do I have this right? You know, am I getting this right? That doesn't happen all the time because he feels pretty good about where he's, you know, interpreting the law. But having worked with Mike for the last 4 years and having seen his work and the way he's defended the town in other matters not related to the planning board, I have a tremendous amount of confidence in the work that Mike does.
So there was an error, okay?
Yep.
An inadvertent error made during that meeting as far as the vote was concerned. 3-3 a tie is actually a defeat.
Yep.
But then you're saying that even with that, had they not voted again, they still would have had to vote to approve or make a motion to approve the project.
Right.
Beyond that, okay, beyond the vote and the mistake that was made, and that's being corrected, and I understand that, but beyond that, people are concerned about traffic studies. And they live there, and they know what the traffic's like on their road and at both ends of that road.
Right.
When you try to get into the other 128 or back onto 28.
Yep.
And there's concern about the traffic studies.
Yep.
How do we... What's the validity of those traffic studies? You know better than anybody because you know where they came from.
Yep.
So we had a traffic study done that came from, what was the first one?
So the way it works in any design review process, every development has to go through this. They have to submit traffic studies. And what happens is, so there, the developer will have their own traffic engineer and submit their own traffic study.
Right.
That then gets reviewed by the town's third-party engineer, who we have two of them. One is Stantec and one is Tie and Bond.
Okay. Stantec we've been using forever. Tie and
We've
Bond
had
I'm not
Stantec
as familiar
for
with.
a long time.
Yeah.
The legislature now had passed a law a number of years ago that said you actually have to give developers an option, a choice in
Oh, I see. Okay.
in traffic
Which one?
engineers.
Okay.
Typically, they don't ask for it, and so what we'll do, because we have two, is we switch them
Back and forth.
depending on how the application comes in. So in this case, it was Stantec. So Stantec's third-party engineer reviews the traffic study
From the
developer and makes comments about it, where there's agreement and where there's disagreement.
Okay.
In addition to that, because this involved state roads, and in particular 28, where it intersects with Stonehenge, the state got involved as well and reviewed the traffic study and commented on it as well.
So there was one study and then two commentaries. Is that
More
correct?
or less,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Yeah. And these are highly analyzed studies.
Right.
I mean,
and it's a pretty routine process. I mean, this is something that they go through all the time.
It's very routine, yeah. Okay. And again, it's very atypical, and it wasn't the case in Stonehenge's study either, that when a developer submits a study, the third-party traffic engineer comes back and says, yep,
agree.
Agree. It almost never
Not
happens.
likely, yeah.
And it didn't happen in this case either. They had comments on, we want you to look at this again, want to look at that. In fact, that's how the right-hand turning lane that the developer has to build
came into existence.
Okay. They didn't offer that initially.
Yeah. Yeah.
But through Stantec and through the state, it came back that you've got to, this is the mitigation you've got to provide for, that intersection.
Creating extra traffic.
And the state came back, the state came back and said, this is a failed intersection. It's already in failure. You're adding to the failure, but you didn't create the failure. And so therefore, we're good with the mitigation that is going to happen here with creating the right hand.
So who created the failure? Us or the state?
It's just over time. Just developments over time. More development moves into an area. You look at the Exit 5 Travel Plaza. That obviously, it all different things.
Right. So do we have? Does it come down to the point where it's the town's responsibility to fix that failure, or
So
is it the state's? Okay,
I'll get to that.
I'll give you a chance then.
Yeah. So just on the whole traffic thing, because if this had gone to court, right, the court's not going to say, okay, let me hear from the neighbors, and you give me your anecdotal
They want
evidence
to see
of traffic.
They want to see documents.
They are going to look at the in this case the traffic experts. Okay, and by the way, that isn't to discount what the neighbors see as traffic problems in it. Anyone who travels that road knows that there's traffic issues, especially at the intersection of 28 in Stonehenge. But there's traffic at Hardy and Stonehenge as well. So it's not like anyone doesn't believe or know that there's traffic problems there. But
or
at the
care. We care.
Right. But at the end of the day, in terms of the planning process, and if it had gone to court, they're going to look at, that's why you have put the shoe on the other foot. Let's say there was no traffic analysis done by a third party or by the developer, and we just went off of people's gut of, I don't think this is going to create a law. Or, you couldn't approve projects that way based on what your gut tells you or what.
Judges are not fond of that attitude.
No, but again, when this goes back to an objective process versus subjective, you try to make it as objective as possible so that your personal opinions aren't being inserted into the process. And I think I said it before publicly, I'll say it again. Stantec, you talk to developers all around the state that have done work in Londonderry. Stantec is one of the most difficult engineering firms for developers because they analyze to a T. And they're difficult in the sense that they require the developers to do a lot of work.
They're not just yes men.
And they don't roll over either at all. So again, that's another thing I kind of heard out there was, the third-party traffic engineer didn't do their job. It'd be the first time you'd hear a developer say that they were easy to work with, or they rolled over for the developer. That's Stantec has that reputation, and it's been good for the town in that we know we're getting quality engineering from the work that they're doing. So that's the traffic engineering process. Now, you had asked about whose responsibility it is to fix the intersection.
Right.
It's a state intersection, so it's the state's responsibility. It's not the town's responsibility to do it. However, what we can do as a town is try to put a lot of pressure on the state to move this up on their list of intersections, failed intersections that need to be improved.
And are we doing that?
We are doing that through a number of channels.
Okay.
We've asked for it to be submitted in the 10-year transportation plan that's done every 2 years. We've done that process through Southern New Hampshire Planning, which compiles all the different things, and they've ranked it as a high priority, and they'll give that to the state. We've talked to Councilor Chris Pappas. Ted Combs, our newest town councilor, reached out to Chris Pappas and spoke to him about it. I followed up with Chris, and we're looking right now to see if there's another avenue of funding available to try to get this rolling even quicker. We're trying to make this happen as soon as possible. I've asked for a meeting to be set up between New Hampshire DOT, Chris Pappas, and the governor's office. In fact, the governor's office called me last week to offer their assistance and to offer their help if anything can be done with this. So we're working a bunch of different avenues right now to try to get it moved up high on the priority list for DOT to improve that intersection there. And if we were able to do it quick enough, what we've said, what the town council said at the last meeting is, let's see if we can get funding from the state. Let's see if the town, is willing to contribute some money, and the developer. The developer's on the hook for that right turn in creating it. Well, if we can get this going quick enough, maybe they can give us the money, and that money can go toward completing that intersection.
Okay.
Yeah. And it probably is going to cost anywhere from $750,000 to $1 million to get that intersection
now,
completed.
is that the same process that we used when we got the lights on Mammoth Road, 128?
Are you talking about at Page Road?
No.
Whereabouts?
No, I'm talking on 128. I'm sorry, did I say 28? 128 Mammoth Road.
Oh, in Litchfield?
At the end of the Litchfield, the Litchfield intersection.
I don't know, Dottie, because I wasn't.
You weren't. Jeez, Kevin.
I don't know what grade
you
I was in.
You haven't been here forever.
Those ones,
okay. No, you were not in school when those went in. They weren't that long ago.
But I don't know what process we used there.
I do remember that we contributed, that the town contributed to that process financially.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that is also a state road, so I'm assuming that the state had a lot of impact on when and how that got done.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely, they would have. Same thing with the lights at Pillsbury.
Yes.
Road.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So everything is going by the book, by the ordinances, by the state rules. Everybody's following their rules.
Let me mention one other thing.
Go
ahead.
I was just going to say, can our residents, if they wish to, can they see copies of these reports?
Oh, absolutely.
Can they get a copy if they go to the town hall, or see a copy if they want to look at it?
And that's a great lead-in, Dottie, to another point, which is as soon as a developer submits an application for design review, which design review all takes place at the staff level before it hits the planning board.
Right.
As soon as they submit for design review, it goes on the website. So you can go on the planning department website, and there's a link for projects under design review, and you can review all of the materials associated with that project.
So those traffic studies and everything are right in that?
Yeah, they should be. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, if they're not, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they should be on there,
Yeah,
or people
okay.
can stop in if they want to review them, without having to look online.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
can stop into the planning board
office,
and
okay.
review them in, the planning office and review them in there too. But yeah, I mean, folks are welcome to, again, review these applications when they get submitted, because we put them all online.
Just an sidebar question here. If I don't know what the rules are now. I know that when I was working for the town, if people wanted a copy of something, we could charge them. We had something in our ordinances or whatever that allowed us to charge those people for them.
Yeah.
So much per page or whatever. I can't remember
now
what it was.
$1 a page, I think is what it is.
$1. Whoa, $1 a page now. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do we ever waive that if somebody really can't afford that?
Yeah, I mean, we'll work with people, Dottie.
Okay,
The reason it's $1 is because with everything being online,
it's
we're
there.
trying to discourage people from.
Understood. Okay, I understand. Yeah, because they can print it off on their own.
Yeah.
If they wanted
Right.
to, they could probably do that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
all good to know.
the other thing I'll mention too, and this came up at a recent council meeting, is, you know, one of the things John Farrell had said is, you know, in hindsight, what we should have done is purchased this property years ago.
So and I know you tried.
So that well, we tried. Sure, we tried after the developer came in, but what he was saying is, 5 years ago, we should have purchased it. But what that should trigger in people's minds are, let's look around town and see, are there currently properties that can be developed that are not currently developed that we don't want to see developed?
Because they would seriously impact neighborhoods or whatever. Okay.
You know, let's look at that and see if we can act proactively. And, you know,
well, we were very proactive with purchasing conservation land.
Well, I was going to say,
this is a different direction we need to take for a while.
Yeah, and the conservation fund, you know, has about $1.5 million in it right now. So, you know, there's always monies there too to, you know, to purchase properties that we want to see be open space in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This has been really good for me. I feel like I have a better understanding of how things have progressed and why.
And you know, look, it's no fingers to be pointed here. It's as incumbent upon the residents to dig into this stuff and say, okay, why did these things happen the way it is, as it is for the appointed and elected officials, and I include myself in appointed, to explain why things happened the way they did. You know, for instance, at the last planning board meeting, the chairman had said, we're not going to accept any comment on anything other than what was being taken place there that night. And there were a lot of people who were upset by the fact that they felt like she was shutting down.
They're being stifled.
Yeah. Yeah. And what wasn't explained, and again, I don't think it was intentional, was that it wasn't just an arbitrary decision to say, I'm not taking any comment on this. There were legal implications on why nothing outside of what was happening that evening could be discussed. And
so something that we could do proactively, which is part of why I started this show, is deal more with communications, with good communication. I do think that we assume a lot, no matter what profession we're in. We assume that if we use our little abbreviations and things like that, that everybody else knows what's going on, and they don't know what's going on. So I think that that's something that we should be more aware of, make our chairman more aware of when they're running meetings, that we need to take just that extra few seconds to explain what this means or why I'm doing this. And
we actually have a training coming up for all of our chairman and vice chairman of the boards.
Who's is that something you're initiating?
Well, it was initiated by us. My assistant manager Lisa is kind of spearheading it, but we're also bringing someone in from NHMA, New Hampshire Municipal Association, to come in and talk as well about how to run an effective meeting. So, you know, because we think that...
And don't forget the communications component.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yep.
Okay, I want people to communicate, because I think that once we understand, we are more accepting and more understanding.
Right.
And I would definitely, again, like you said, no finger pointing or anything, but I really would encourage people that when you have a question about a project, talking with your neighbors, talking with your friends, talking with the person down the street, that's great to do, but you need to have facts in front of you, okay?
You do.
So you can go to the town hall. It's all there. I know it's all there because I've found it myself in the past when I needed to. So go there, and if you don't find it, let your town manager know, because he should make sure you can find it. And if he doesn't help you, we have transparency in government.
That's right.
You can just call us up here at the Londonderry Access Center and let us know what it is you want to have discussed, and we'll get that information out to you as well. So lots of ways to go for here to get the info and make sure you know that you've got all the facts. And let's not assume that You're always just trying to do something that we don't like. Okay. Because I know that this has been, I mean, I've talked to people on different sides, and I know that this whole project has just been so difficult for people on both sides of it. You've got to follow the rules, and the other people have to live with the rules. What the rules end up with. So
it's been very difficult.
Yeah, it has.
Very stressful time. I think your point about get the facts is a very poignant, and that's the thing. Don't just believe hearsay or what, like you said, what you heard from your neighbors or friends. Dig into it more and find out is there really truth to this or not.
The rumors just spread like wildfire. So you have to be very, very cognizant of that and be careful that you don't buy into those kinds of things. How are we doing? We're having a great conversation.
I know.
Okay. We have a new chairman.
We do.
It is Tom Dolan, so we can call him too.
Yeah. And Tom's retired now, so he's got plenty of time.
Plenty of time. Yes. Okay. Just want to run through some of these
Sure.
other quick items here. The Vets Tax Credit, how did that turn out, the Veterans Tax Credit?
So
where are we
we're
on that?
still waiting for it to be approved out of the Senate and signed by Governor Sununu. But as soon as that does happen, we'll be bringing that up to the town council, probably looking at a phase-in over
Increase?
3 years,
Okay.
a phased-in increase over 3
Okay,
years.
okay.
So I don't see it not being signed and passing the legislature.
I would hope it would. We do
Yeah.
have a few vets up there too.
Yes.
So hopefully that will
certainly
be
do.
okay. And we'll talk about that some more when we get down to the to the town side of it. The Cross Farm development
Yes.
up on Adams Road. There's 200 units going in up there.
That's what's
the
being
plan?
proposed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand that there was a variance being asked for to move it closer to the road, I think it was. Is that
Well, what they asked for was a variance similar to what they asked for when they built the Hickory Woods development across from the flea market.
Yeah.
They asked for a variance from 40 feet to 30 feet from the roadway, their internal roadways.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Which are all private roads. The variance was granted for Hickory Woods. The variance was not granted for this particular development. The ZBA didn't feel like they met the hardship requirements for it. So what it means is that instead of the homes being 30 feet back from the road, they're going to be 40 feet back from the road. Probably just means smaller backyards. For
Longer driveway.
What's that?
And a longer driveway.
And a longer driveway.
Yeah.
Something that, though, I'll mention too about this study that I was, you'll probably read about in the paper, is when this project was first presented to, and there's similarities to Stonehenge on this, and I'll explain that in a second, but when this project was presented to the planning board, their egress, their easements they have for this project were onto Adams Road and Cross Road. They didn't have access onto 102, which is where they really wanted access so that they could put the majority of the traffic onto 102. The problem is that the deeds on the property stated they couldn't do a curb cut onto 102.
Yeah.
The only access onto 102 was through a tiny strip that the state owns where the old pump was. Remember the old water pump?
Of course I remember
along 102?
That. Yep.
That's been closed for years. The state owns that. So what the planning board said when they came in for conceptual last year was, would really like you to get access onto 102 because we really don't want you dumping all these cars onto.
So go talk to the state?
So go talk to the state. Not an easy process getting the state to offer up this land. They have to get legislative approval. And then there's a survey that has to be done and all this other thing. So they contacted.
There are so many rules.
There really are. There really are. And
Good
rules
and
are
bad.
fine.
Good and bad, yeah,
I
know.
Rules
They
are
can be
fine. They're there
good,
for a
but,
reason.
yeah.
It's the process
And
that
just
people
slow
wish
things
was
down.
more efficient.
Yeah.
So the developer contacted me and said, hey, can you try to help move this along and see if you can get this going quicker? because, we're on the clock now, and
sure,
we
time is money.
Would like things to move a little quicker. So we contacted the state, also because we wanted, here's the thing, it's not like if they didn't have access to 102, they couldn't do the development. They could still do the development. The problem is that they'd be disturbing a lot more wetlands, and the roads are going on to Cross and Adams.
It's not the ideal situation at all.
And so we got involved proactively to try to get the state to move this piece along, essentially to avoid another Stonehenge situation, where instead of the traffic going on the back roads, they're going on to the main road. So we got the state moving to the point where they got legislative approval to sell it. They got the appraisal done. And the process is they give the municipality first right of refusal to purchase it. And if we don't, then they put it up to public auction. They don't give it right to the developer. So the developer would then have to bid on it along with a lot of other folks.
Can you buy it and then sell it to the developer?
So that was the plan we came up with, is that...
What a great idea.
I know. Dottie, you should be town manager.
Yeah, right.
But that was the idea, is, okay, we'll purchase it, immediately sell it to the developer. That way we know that they're... Because
you got a guarantee there.
There was no guarantee they were going to be the highest bidder. And at some point, if someone kept outbidding them, they could just say, fine, I give up, you take it. And the state's well aware that that's what the arrangement is. So we've entered into an agreement with Cross Farm Development to do just that, to purchase it from the state. They're going to purchase it from us for the same price. So it's not costing the town any money to do it, and then they'll get their piece and have access to it. The reason we were talking about this at Conservation recently is because, again, the rules of the state are anytime there's a land transaction like this, it has to have a hearing at Conservation, a hearing at the Planning Board, and then 2 public hearings before the Town Council.
And this is called communication. A lot of communication.
Yes, it is a lot. So that's what's going on there.
All right.
I raise it because, again, you'll probably be reading about it in the paper. But I also raise it because, again, people could ask the question, well, why is the town getting involved in this? Why is the town helping the developer? Well, in this case,
you're helping the town.
We're helping the town out. It's, as I said before, it's not like the developer would be stymied if he didn't have access to this. They have other access. We're trying to make it the best situation by putting the access onto 102.
Sounds good.
Yep.
We are not going to get to all these items today. We're not.
That's
We've only got a few more minutes here, but so let's see. What would be a really... Okay, well, we know the water ban is lifted. I think everybody has seen that because I've seen people watering their lawns recently. Although I don't know why. All it does is rain.
I know.
Some sun would be great. There's one thing I want to mention before we wrap it up here, and that is I saw an article in the Londonderry Times about a local resident very nearly being caught up in the IRS scam that's going around out there. And just kind of like on a more personal note, I guess, just to say to people, it's not a town issue necessarily, although the police do get involved in those things, but you got to be so careful. And the IRS notifies you by mail. They don't call you. They don't email you. They notify you by mail if there's something that you have to deal with them. And they never threaten you. They tell you what the situation is, and then you do get to sit down and talk with them. Maybe you don't always get what you wanted, but there is a process that you go through there too. So please don't respond to those kinds of things. If you're unsure or it does scare you and you want to know if this one's for real or not, you can share it with the police department. They will usually know, and they can also be checked with the IRS as well to see what's going on. But don't give anybody any money until you know 100% for sure that you are giving it to the person you think you're giving it to.
Yeah. Just don't give them the money. Don't give out credit card information, social security information.
Any kind of personal information.
And when you get a call like that, even if you've done all the right things, the first thing you should do afterwards is call the police department immediately. The police need to know about all of these calls coming in. And that is where the town gets involved,
Yes.
we want to follow up and know when these scams are being targeted.
Yeah, and you also, for those of you who get your voicemail also sent to your email, like Comcast does that, if you get a message, you can just print that out and pass that off to the police department too.
Yep.
And then they'll have all the phone numbers and the entire language, exact language of what went on there. And there are other scams that are out there too, and we'll talk about those at another time. I might actually do a One Voice at a Time show just about that, because there's so many things that go on and people get taken by surprise. And then a lot of times what happens, and don't let this happen to you, is that if you do get caught up in a scam, people will be embarrassed to admit it. Don't be embarrassed.
Absolutely not.
Get out there. There's no shame in it. Just get out there and share the information so that it can get stopped, and hopefully you won't get in too deep.
Yep.
And I'm going to end on that. Well, one more thing. I just want to say that Sergeant Jerry Gillespie passed away recently, and he was a focal point in Londonderry for a very long time. And just to remember what great service he gave us for the police department. And
yeah, I didn't know Jerry personally, but obviously know a lot of the folks at the police department who did and who worked with him for many years, and
many years.
just had wonderful, wonderful things to say about him. Just
he was very dedicated.
By all accounts, a terrific human being.
Yeah, he was a good guy. So on that, I'm going to say let's hope the sun comes out in Londonderry and other places, because we could use a little of that. I know last year we were begging for rain. This year we're not begging at all. So I want to thank you again, Kevin.
Thank you, Dottie.
And I want to remind all of you that if there's anything in particular that you want us to discuss, we are happy to do that. And don't forget, there's a lot of information on the website for the town, which is the information's at the end of the show. And if you don't find what you're looking for, ask, because it will be found. And if you are not getting the satisfaction you want, you have Kevin, and then we can put it on TV. So we'll get it there. We'll get you the info you want. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you'll tune in with us again next month. And we're going to be wrapping this up, and I'm going to be talking with the school superintendent on the school version of transparency in government in a little bit. So thank you very much, and we will talk to you later.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Dottie.
Glad you were here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for not yelling at me.